Okay, so today I'm going to go over one of the most problematic areas for a lot of people just getting into the hobby of motorized bicycling, and that's how do you keep the doggone chain on the bike. You have a lot of problems with your chain coming off. Most of it goes to incorrect setup of the sprocket. Now I'm going to go into the different areas here, and then as well not having your tensioner adjusted properly, not having your motor correctly fastened to the frame. If you have any play or wiggle in the motor in operation, all bets are off. You will not keep your chain on your bike during operation. You're going to have problems with it here. The number one issue that people have is getting the rag joint set up correctly. I'm going to show you how to do that. I'll also show you a chain that I can sell you or you can purchase that is a stronger chain, a little bit wider chain that'll give you a little bit more wiggle room. But here's the 415 chain that comes with the kits here. And here's the chain that I recommend that we use here. If you want, check the link down below. I can sell you the chain breaker tool, anything you need here. But here is the a comparison between the 415 standard chain that comes with most kits and this here's an upgraded chain here. This chain here is stronger than the stock chain. This chain here is also a little bit wider here. The inside dimension is wider, and that'll give you a little bit more wiggle room if your sprockets have a little bit of side-to-side play in it. Okay, so when you get a new chain, you're going to have to cut it. I recommend using a chain breaker tool. Now what we're going to do, we're going to cut it here where we've got the plate here. We need to remove the smaller piece here on the end, and we're going to put a connector link, a master link in. You open the jaws up of the chain breaker tool and it clamps onto the chain underneath the plates there. And then you have a pin in it where you screw down on the handle here. That moves the pin down and that presses onto the pin inside of the chain. And here you can see the link has been pressed out, and what it does is it presses the pin out of the top plate here, and then you've got to go back and do your second one. Screw it down, take your time, and quite often when it goes through, you can kind of feel a little bit of a pop when it goes through. You want to take your time and get everything lined up. Make sure you have the jaws on the underside of the link here, and then it pops through. Sorry about my camera work here. It's kind of hard to do this in a very small area and try to keep all of it visible. Then once you pop it loose, you get rid of the plate. Now you can go back with your tool, put the tool back onto it, and press it out all the way. Some of these chains are rather tight and it's rather hard to get the link out. So I will use the tool to go ahead and press the link out, and then use a screwdriver and then a pair of needle nose pliers to get the link out. Sometimes you have to wrestle with it a little bit. Now this is a lot easier than grinding off the pin at the top of the plate and using a punch to do it here after you've done a few, and you're not trying to do it for a camera. You can do it rather quickly. So here is how you put a master link, a connector link onto a chain. You see the grooves there. That groove is for the clip that is going to go on to hold it on. You put your plate over it. Now here is the clip that's going to hold everything together. You have an opened end and a closed end of it. You want to make note of the direction of travel. Let's say the chain is going to be traveling in the direction I'm pointing here. Well, I want the closed end of the clip to be in the direction of travel, to have that. In case something strikes it, you don't want it to knock it off. And I'll show you on the bike a little bit more detail here. I use a pair of needle nose where I grab the pin and the clip to put it on, and here's how you take it off. So here's the chain installed on the bike there. You can see the closed end. This is the direction of travel that the chain is going from the rear wheel to the motor. I want to make sure that the closed end is facing the direction of travel. If something was to hit it, it could knock it off. basically with your chain looking straight down, looking straight down, you want to make sure that your top part of the chain here is directly over the lower part of the chain. Okay, so if you were to take a string and go from the center line of your tire through the center line of the bike, that needs to be in a straight line. When you install your rear tire, your rear wheel, you want to make sure that you have it perfectly aligned with the center line of the bike. If you have your tire cocked one way or the other, your sprocket will not be in a straight line. They both have to be parallel. So you have your tire and you have your sprocket, and they have to be in parallel with each other. If they're not lined up straight, your chain is going to be, your sprocket is going to be at an angle, and it's going to have a tendency to want to walk off of the chain. So that is foremost. So number one, we got to make sure that the wheel is firmly installed on the bike, that there's no wobble in it. You want to check your bearings, make sure that your bearings are properly adjusted, that there's no wobbling there. You can check on YouTube as well. I've got video showing you how you can adjust the bearings on it. I've got video on greasing the bearings and servicing it. Whenever you set up a bike, you should go ahead and grease your bearings and check them, and that should be part of your installation procedure. But if you haven't, check my video for how to adjust your bearings. Okay, so I'm going to show you here how we check out a sprocket. First thing you want to do is you want to make sure that all of the bolts are evenly tightened up all the way around your sprocket. You as well obviously want to make sure that your sprocket is centered. If it is off center and where the wheel spins, your sprocket's going up and down and up and down and right and left, that's not going to work. So you got to make sure that that sprocket is centered on the wheel. Now here what I'm doing, I'm putting the dust cap in to show you how I check as well when I'm installing one here, how it's going to fit, if I've got it centered or not. I grind the dust cap down and I make sure that the dust cap is evenly ground down, and I check the gap all the way around it, and I see to it that I have an even gap to ensure that the sprocket is centered on the wheel. Next, I turn the wheel around here. I've got it. You can either do this on the bike or rig up a jig to do it. And then I'm using the screwdriver here to check how much side-to-side play I have on the sprocket. Now you can see that the sprocket is wobbling side to side. If the wobble is any wider than the inside distance, the inside gap between the plates of the chain, your sprocket is going to have a tendency to walk off. Where the sprocket is out to the left here and it's rubbing against the screwdriver, we'll call that the high side. So you make sure obviously that all of your bolts are evenly tightened, and then where it's on the high side, we need to tighten it up just a little bit more in order to try to bring the sprocket down. And sometimes I'll even use a hammer on the high spots to go ahead and try to push the sprocket in. You don't want to hit it too hard, but you can work on it and tap it a little bit harder and harder until you get it there after you've tried tightening it up. Once you get it to where your gap is no wider than the width of the chain, you've got your sprocket set up correctly. Okay, so here's a bike that I just ran. It's a brand new bike. Set it up. I had the chain good and tight right before I drove it, and check this out. I didn't even go a block. Your chains, when your chains are brand new, they're going to stretch. So when you first set up a bike, you don't want to run it very far without checking your chain. Go about a half a block and check it, tighten it up. You don't want to get your chain too tight either. You get it too tight, you'll damage the bearings and the motor. So get it to where you have about 1 inch of play in it, and you should be fine. So you want to make sure that your tensioner is firmly fastened to the frame. The lower chain gets fed onto the sprocket, so if your tensioner is pushed in or pushed out, it's not going to feed the chain correctly onto the sprocket. So we've got what we call the chain line, and that everything needs to be in a straight alignment here. Hold on a second. Get out of here, dog. Get out of here. So if it's not feeding it in a straight line directly below the top part of the chain, it's going to have a tendency to come off of your sprocket. Number one, you want to make sure that your motor is firmly mounted to the frame, that there's no play in it at all. Number two, you want to make sure that your chain tensioner, the idler here, is correctly installed, that it's firmly fastened to the chainstay here. You want to check that both of your chains are right on top of each other and they're running perpendicular to the center line of the bike. Then you want to make sure that your sprocket, number one, is centered correctly on the rear wheel. In operation, if your sprocket is going around, if it wasn't mounted on the center of the flange, you're going to have problems. I hope I've taught you something about the chain. If you had any problems, if you got any questions, leave them down below. I can help you out the best I can online. Might have to send me some pictures, but if you found this video useful, give me a thumbs up, click subscribe. Trixie hopes you enjoyed it too. Thanks for watching.